Welcome to another episode of our personal empowerment audio series, Finding Yourself in Paradise. Hi, I'm Michael Benner.
And I'm Steve Snyder, and our program today is on that interesting way of looking at people in terms of their personality. One of the most basic ways is looking at people as being introverted or extroverted. Of course, the truth is most people are somewhere in the middle, somewhat introverted and somewhat extroverted, but that whole continuum of introversion through ambiversion all the way to extreme extroversion is what we want to explore in our show today.
I saw a greeting card not long ago that said something along the lines of, "Congratulations, you are unique." And you open the card and it says, "Just like everybody else."
That's a pretty wonderful paradox, isn't it?
Of course, everybody is unique. We've got fingerprint evidence, and now we got DNA proof that no two people are exactly alike. But personalities can be grouped or categorized. People do tend to be somewhat like other people in this way or that way, and it's a fascinating field. And one of the early stages of psychology was to try to categorize people based on everything from the size of their body. An endomorph was round and therefore jolly. An ectomorph was skinny and, of course, therefore nervous and high-strung. And the mesomorph somewhere in the middle. There was a pseudoscience called phrenology, where personality was determined by the bumps on your head. And there have been, as far back as Hippocrates, we talked about this in our newsletter, 400 BC, he had 4 categories of personality. And that's pretty much what Carl Jung came up with, and then that's been expanded in Myers-Briggs. And so still, even today in the 21st century, people are categorizing. The Enneagram is something I'd like, Steve, you to talk about. You've done seminars and workshops on the Enneagram. That's a 9 personality type model, right?
Right, and it's not as if one personality is always extrovert and another is always an introvert, but they do have tendencies. The 9 personalities, they number them 1 through 9. One is basically someone who needs to have like control of everything. They want it all in order. They're very logical and rational, and pretty much needs everything to be perfect. Perfectionist is the basic name of the number 1. And ones tend to be either introverted or extroverted. You could have either one. They don't really lean toward one or the other. Now, 2s are the helper personality. They usually find someone or some cause to believe in. They want to put all their energy into promoting someone or something and making it work, and they're often extroverted personalities. 3s are usually extroverted as well, but not always. But 3s are the performers, the ones that they want to get things done. They want to do it right. They want to do it fast. If it's not working, let's change it. But they want to get credit for having done it. They want to make sure that they're the ones that, gets their name on the sign that says written by or done by. Now, 4s, those are the romantics, creative and artistic, and when things aren't going right, the ones that are sort of like make mountains out of molehills, like really high strung and really emotional, over emotional kinds of people. Very artistic, but they want big happiness. They want big wonderful things. 5s are very logical, rational. They're the step back observers. They're leave me alone, give me my privacy, let me work on my stuff, don't make me do your stuff, kind of thing. Let me focus on what I want to do, and let me sort of step back and not really be emotional. Let me be more like rational and logical and everything. 6s are fascinating because they're really the ones that are the loyalists. They're just like, they'll be there for you. They'll never cheat on you. They'll never leave you. They'll never hurt you. They'll totally support you. But underneath it all, for the 6s, they're worriers. They're always looking out for everybody, but they're worrying what could go wrong, and having lots of time spent in thinking about what could go wrong. 6s are the only ones where there's 2 different kinds of 6s. There's phobic 6s and counterphobic 6s. The phobic 6s are the ones who stay away from things they're afraid of, and they shy away from things that are dangerous. And the counterphobic 6s are the ones that say, I'm going to go skydiving, or I'm going to go deep sea diving. I'm going to do the dangerous. I'm going to drive race cars, to prove that I can get through my fear. The sevens, which is what I am, and I believe Michael as well, sort of the enthusiasts, the ones that are like really upbeat, happy, positive, optimistic, great starters, not always great finishers, but really exciting and really very passionate about what we do. Let us have lots of options. Don't corral us in. Don't make us only do one thing. Let us have lots of pies in the oven, lots of things going on. The 8 is the boss, the in charge, the my way or the highway. I know how to do this because I know how to do this better than anybody else. If it's a good idea, if it's my idea, other people's ideas aren't great ideas. And they're natural born leaders. They've been leaders since they were little kids. And 9 is the peacemaker, the mediator, the one that is always making sure everybody else is happy and taking care of, making sure nobody fights with anybody and nobody has any problems with anybody and everybody gets along. So we have these 9 basic personality types, and whereas, some are more often outgoing and extroverted and some are more often introverted, like the 5s are usually introverted and the 7s and 8 are usually extroverted, but all of them have some extroverted and some introverted qualities.
It's interesting listening to you describe those 9 personality types in the Enneagram system, which I understand to be at least rooted in ancient Sufi and Islamic philosophy, mystical Islamic philosophy, and yet...
through Jung and Ichazo and all kinds of interesting people along the way.
And Gurdjieff, I think.
And Gurdjieff too.
But... it reminded me almost of astrology. It's almost like you were saying, well, a Sagittarian is this, and if your sun sign is Aries, you're this way. Yeah. And then I was thinking about this numerologist I knew who could summarize everything into 10, right? You don't have a 0 in your system. There were 10 types of people. You were a 1 or a 2 or a 3 up through the 0. And yet psychology really honors this whole idea, especially the Jungian model, the 4, that became an 8, and then the mother-daughter team, Myers-Briggs, has sort of fleshed it out to 16, but you're still working with, is this person a thinker? Or do they sort of feel? Are they interior or exterior? Are they introverted or extroverted? Are they more concerned with problem solving and what's going on in their heads? Or with the external world? Are they always looking out there and wanting to reach out into the world and have an impact on the world? And of course, most people, I think well-adjusted people, whatever their personality type, whatever model we pull upon, have, as you indicated earlier, Steve, the ability to pull on both of those qualities, to be an ambivert, to be able to enjoy introversion sometimes, brain games, mind games, reflecting and pondering and introspecting, contemplating, just tripping out, daydreaming with your own thoughts and feelings. That's a wonderful thing for everybody to be able to do. And at the same time, to be able to sometimes, in certain situations, be the extrovert. You and I love public speaking. We love being on the radio and doing podcasts. Put us in front of a crowd and we're real happy, but that doesn't really speak to how I might feel if I was going to a party where I didn't know anyone. I could describe my feelings as bashful or shy or introverted in a situation like that. So it's really not a matter of are you an introvert or are you an extrovert. We're all somewhere in the middle, and the idea is to develop your weakness. If you're strong as an introvert, but you're not so strong as an extrovert, then you can develop that side, and vice versa.
Yeah, I've been thinking about, since we decided this on our topic, I've been thinking about myself in terms of my levels of extroversion and introversion. And, clearly 2 of my great passions, one's an extreme extroversion act, which you were talking about, public speaking. I mean, getting in front, being the star, being the center of attention is one of the most extroverted things you could do. And then another great passion is reading, which is clearly one of the most introverted things you can do. In fact, it's like one of the benchmarks for introverts. Read. They do. Introverts read. And they think a lot and they reflect. Well, I do both. And I was looking at my life and as I was thinking, through my 20s and 30s, I always did both these things, this introverted thing of reading and this extroverted thing of public speaking. But through my 20s and 30s, I spent most of the other time like with a bunch of people, either in a youth group or as a leader, an advisor to a youth group, and then later as opening up a business, live and learn, and having a team of 12 or 15 or 20 people, and like a family kind of team, and living most of my days with a whole bunch of people. And then when I got into my 40s and 50s, I'd given Live and Learn up, and I was starting to travel and do corporate stuff and doing radio stuff with you, and I got married. And so most of my time when I wasn't reading or public speaking was spent with one person, either my wife or you, and some with my brother and some with a few friends, but very little time spent in a social gathering. And I, like you, find myself very shy and uncomfortable in a gathering of people where they're all strangers and I don't know any of them, especially when there's a huge age difference. They're all young and I'm much older or something like that. It's a little uncomfortable. It's not terribly uncomfortable. I don't like blush with shyness, but it's just not my scene. So it's interesting how I was probably 60-40 extrovert when I was in my 20s and 30s, and 60-40 introvert now in my 40s and as I'm finishing my 50s.
So if one of the primary points of this whole program is to help you develop one or the other, if you're a little weak on one side of this equation or the other, then there's going to have to be some inventory taken. And you might, if you haven't already, begin to, as Steve has obviously done and as I've begun to do, reflect upon your personality, just in these two aspects. Introvert, extrovert, that teeter-totter, that spectrum. And again, where do you think you fall on that?
I mean, think about simply when you have a choice, would you rather be with a bunch of people or some other people or by yourself or just with one person in deep conversation? I mean, the extrovert really gets their stimulus from being out there and connecting with all kinds of different people. And that doesn't mean sitting at home on Facebook. I mean, physically interacting with people. Introverts prefer not having the energy of other people around, especially people who are like really excited or real high energy. They're more sensitive, and it feels like a little overwhelming to be around all that stuff, that noise that feels like overwhelmed. So where do you fall? And in what situations are you comfortable with numbers of people around you, and which situations aren't you? Starting with the inventory is a good place, but we're not saying one's better than the other. What we're saying is that you can learn to become really quite an excellent ambivert. You can learn to, in the situations that warrant it, let the best of your extroversion emerge, and in those situations where it's appropriate, allow the best of your introversion to emerge, and find yourself a balanced place in between the two that feels most comfortable for you.
Exactly. Let's talk about why now. There's really many ways of looking at this, but I'm going to propose that part of your mission in life is to do two things: to know yourself and to understand other people so that you can maximize your contribution to them. The order in which we do those two things, know thyself and help other people, be of service to other people, is critical. Now, many people do this, I would say, in reverse. They do it backwards, which is trying to understand other people by judging them in a hope that you can then infer something about yourself. All right? This is where all the injunctions from the religious prophets and spiritual teachers and philosophers and poets and others come in and say, no, you shouldn't judge. Judge not, lest ye be judged, and all of that. People in glass houses, you've ever heard all these aphorisms. But rather, know thyself, the ancient Greek aphorism, or to thine own self be true, or Lao Tzu, one who knows others is wise, but one who knows himself is enlightened. So the order is important. The introvert is about knowing himself. The extrovert, we can argue, is largely about expressing what you've discovered in service, just helping other people, you see, and do it in that order. Think of a ripple that radiates out from a drop in a little pool of water. It goes from the middle out. That's the way our life can be lived, radiating from you out into the world. Everybody's familiar with the side of the equation that's coming at us, right? Much of what people see as life is a struggle against what's coming at you. Well, be sure to look at the other side of that equation. What is radiating from you? What's coming through you and out into the world? Know that self. Develop your ability to be an introvert and introspect, to reflect and to ponder on not just what you think and how you feel, but why you think the way you think. And why do you suppose you feel that way, right, in response to this situation or that circumstance? So so-and-so said something to me, and those words really, really hurt. Really? Well, then instead of obsessing on how they did that to you, ask you, how did you empower those words? How did you give those words the power to hurt you? Take that responsibility as an introvert seeking to know himself, herself. And then as an extrovert, we express ourselves as social creatures. We've got to have this side. As much as I like being alone and spending time alone, I did years of backpacking and hiking alone. The solitude was exquisite at times. And yet I love other people, and I am incomplete. And I think each of us is incomplete without rich and wonderful, loving relationships. Ultimately, life is about our connection with other people, reconnecting, the harmonies that we create. And that's the extrovert side. That's one way of looking at this.
It is. And, most people choose, I think, because it's easier and safer to be surrounded by others, to be in the tribe, to be the extrovert. 3/4 of the population are primarily extroverted. Only about a quarter of the population is really introverted as a general behavior. Again, everybody's a little bit of both. So learning to become an extrovert is not really most people's problem. Most people, they found their gang, at different phases of their life. They have their gang, they have their people that they hang with, and it's easy to be extroverted when you're with your people, whoever your family is, family either through blood or family through choice, but it's the people you hang with. Most people, again, 3/4 of the population, generally speaking, when there's like nothing to do, will go do it with other people. But there's a quarter of the people that are, as Michael said, getting it what I think is in the right order, which is, knowing themselves first, really spending time with themselves. And the advantage for most people is to learn more introversion techniques, so that they can grow and be even happier when they're extroverted. It starts with choosing to find space to be alone. It starts with getting in touch with that part of you that gets uncomfortable when there's nobody around, the part of you that feels lonely, or the part of you that feels incomplete, the part of you that doesn't feel like it's okay to be all by yourself, and get to that feeling as deep as you can into that feeling, and breathe and release that feeling so that you can experience that exquisite experience of solitude Michael was talking about. And then from that place, start to do the introspection, start to do the reflection, start to do the meditation, start to do the prayer, whatever name you want to put on it. Start to go to a place where it's all about understanding, stepping back, using the higher self and seeing the thought train go by, and understanding the feelings as you experience them, and learning about you, learning about how you think, how you feel, who you are, why you feel what you feel. Go there, create a deeper and deeper foundation. And then when you go to, be extroverted, go be with other people, you'll be much more interesting. I mean, there'll be much more interesting things to talk about. The more you understand yourself, I think the more you have something really important to say. So regardless of where you are on that scale, I think a little more, except for those extreme introverts, which are pretty rare, most people, I think, need a good dose of finding a way to feel safe by themselves, getting rid of that uncomfortable feeling of loneliness or of disconnectedness, feel that exquisite sense of solitude, and then do some exploring in that place.
It's an interesting point. What is it about us that causes us to feel lonely, or to, even worse, be afraid to be alone? That's not an uncommon feeling for many, many people, and maybe something we all experience at some times. Feeling a little needy, feeling a little lonely. I mentioned my backpacking experience and just how exquisite the solitude was, but I'll admit, as I look back, I would cycle round to an occasional feeling of loneliness, particularly when I wanted to share the experience with somebody, like something happened on the trail. I came around the corner and there's a porcupine standing in the trail. That happened to me once. And I would have given anything to be able to share that with somebody. We would have had a story we'd tell for days, and something to laugh about, something to joke about, and tell the story over and over again, or just a deer on the ridge or a bear playing with its cub in the river. To be able to turn and share that by watching the expression of somebody else's face. Well, that's part of the richness of a human's love for another human being, and that empathy, that connection that we all have at the heart. And yet, I got to tell you, there are those moments where, who hasn't said, I want to be left alone? Right now, I want to be alone, right? Just go away, leave me alone, right? Well, that might come out of anger, that might come out of hurt, that might come out of fear. But again, there's nothing wrong with that. That can be a rich and wonderful experience. And I'm arguing that the more you understand yourself, the more you do this, introversion, introspection, contemplation, reflection on why you think and feel the way you do. To watch, as Steve just said, that thought train, that train of thoughts, or that thought stream from a somewhat detached place. That's mindful awareness. And that awakens you in the moment to just this incredible feeling of happiness and joy and peace and freedom. And, well, it allows you to remember what it was like to be 4 or 5 or 6 years old, when you didn't know somebody had to pay a bill for the telephone every month. You just knew it hung on the wall or sat on the table, and you could pick it up and use it. You didn't worry about rent or mortgage. You didn't have a car payment. Is it possible to create a carefree life or periods within any given day where you were that free and that spontaneous and that in the moment? Yeah, you can do that by developing what we're saying is a part of being, an introvert, pulling on that ability as well as your ability to be an extrovert and share with other people out into the world. That this is self-discovery, and this is self-development of a higher self, an elevated perspective, detached but not dissociated. You care more. It's not like you care less when you become mindful. You just take that step back, see the bigger picture, and in many ways are even more involved. And that's a level of awareness, of expanded awareness, that we can use introversion, if you will, introspection and contemplation to develop. And then take it to the streets, share that with other people. Talk about your experience, pondering your thoughts and your feelings. It's a wonderful topic of conversation whenever you can find other women and men who are thinking along these lines and really interested, fascinated in the human experience and discovering and developing that uniqueness that is the higher self that we've always said you find in paradise. In paradise, that's what we're talking about. Reflection, contemplation. That's what it means to be an introvert at times, but we're talking about balance, so there's got to be that taking it out to the world as well.
Now, in the situation where two introverts are in a deep conversation about self and about feelings and about the things that they introspect, that's still an introverted experience. Even though you are with another person, you're still being introverted because you're talking about the deep stuff. When two extroverts get together in a conversation, it's usually about the surface stuff. It's about what's going on out there. It's often victim conversations.
That's a
often,
good point.
The
football game, or
the stuff.
What happened at work, or.
But when two introverts get together, and it may be less often, but you can still be very introverted if you know the person you're talking to is also an introvert, and you're like sharing below the surface. Small talk doesn't make it for introverts. They want to talk about meaningful stuff, and they can have meaningful relationships with their partners or their best friends or their spouses and have still an introverted lifestyle with another human being. But To me, the way you determine where you're at in terms of extroversion and introversion is when you're not doing those things that are sort of mandated. You're not sleeping, you're not working, you're not doing the things you have to do, and you have a total choice. Do you want to be by yourself or with one other person, or do you want to be part of a group? And that's pretty much how you determine whether you're being introverted or extroverted at this point in your life. When you have a choice and it's easy to do either one, do you go out with your pals or do you hang out by yourself or with your one significant other, Both are appropriate. As I said, earlier in my life, I did much more of the extroversion stuff, 80% probably, at least 75%. And now I'm doing much more of the introversion stuff. Never 100% either way. But, there's a time for everything. There's a season. And discovering where you're at in the life cycle, what is it time for you to do now? Is it time for you to come out of your shell? That expression, out of your shell. I mean, introverts may be in a shell some of the time, and they'd be way out of the shell other times and still be called introverts. But is it time for you to be more expressive and spend more time with other human beings, or is it time for you to take a step back, create a little more solitary time in your life, and do a little more introspection?
For whatever reason, maybe it's just my personal experience, I don't hear people talking much about role-playing anymore. Maybe, again, it's just... as a young person, I was more aware of conversation along these lines, and I don't hear it as much as I used to. But it seems to me people have forgotten to carry on this conversation about our tendency, because of our natural desire to want to please other people for a series of reasons, for really a lot of different reasons. We tend to play roles or characters in this effort to make other people happy. It's a holdover from childhood, where that's your job. You are a codependent. And as a kid, you depend upon your parents to feed you and clothe you and give you shelter. And again, you're lost as a kid. You can't drive a car, and you wouldn't know where to go if you could. So it's easy to be spontaneous, apparently, as a child. But then we start caring as we enter puberty what other people think, and that becomes inordinately strong. My God, the melodrama of being in middle school and high school and even college, where every event in your life is so dramatic and earth-shaking, as if everything is riding on this one situation. I can laugh about it now, but I can remember it was pretty scary at the time. Well, one of the beauties of being somewhat introverted and having access to this ability to introspect and contemplate is to know the truth about yourself, your genuine, authentic self, the higher self that we talk about, such that you don't really have to play roles. You find yourself not having to worry so much about pleasing other people in order to petition them to like you in return. You just sort of accept that some people like you, some people love you, some people don't dig your action, and some people talk behind your back, and so be it. What are you going to do about that? Just live your life in integrity, and it doesn't matter what other people say about you. Wouldn't that be wonderful to have that kind of freedom? Then you got to spend some time reflecting upon your inner self, reflecting upon why you feel the way you feel, or why you felt in this situation or that situation the way you feel. The nature of your desires. Why do you long for this? Why do you think your life would be better if only this would change? Where did those ideas come from, and do they bear some re-examination? And this is not nearly as difficult as it might seem, because you don't go in there with a logical mind and slice and dice and analyze. That's what we tend to do in normal consciousness, and if you did that in the relaxed state that we call paradise, it'd lift you right back into normal consciousness, and you'd be right back to 8 or 10 thoughts at a time competing for your attention. One of the ways you know you're in paradise is when you let go of the analysis and free associate. You just reflect upon your nature. Whatever comes up, you just watch it bubble up. You don't hold on to it. You don't grab it. You don't stash it away. You don't push it back down. You don't pigeonhole it or store it over here, categorize it, label it, or judge it in any way. You just let it bubble up and go, oh, isn't that interesting? My tendency to like this, but not that. My history of creating this kind of outcome rather than this kind of outcome. Without judgment, without self-blame. You don't judge yourself instead of judging others. You don't blame yourself instead of blaming others. You just drop the judgment and drop the blame altogether and become the peaceful witness. That is enlightening and liberating and gives you the freedom to just be that spontaneous you at any age without having to play these characters and roles. Now it's so much easier to be an extrovert as a result of being a good introvert, I think.
Yeah, and to understand which direction you want to be moving right now. It's like there's a balance point in between very extroverted, and very introverted, that ambiverted place, that maybe it's a 70-30 for you on one direction or 70-30 in the other or 60. There's a place that you'd be even better than you are now. A direction you can start moving, a little more extroverted if you've been inside or a little more introverted if you've been out. And knowing which direction to go, like George Harrison always says, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. So you need to know which direction do you want it. I want to be a little more, in the time that you're spending with other people, is there a part of you going that this is sort of like wasting my time? I'm not really like getting much out of this. I really wish I would be more comfortable like reading a book or learning more about myself. Or are you, when you're sitting by yourself, thinking, I'm really been sitting by myself a whole lot lately, and I wonder if I really should get out there more, if I really should step into being a little more social. There's probably a direction you can move, unless you've got it perfectly balanced. There's probably a direction you can move that would make you even happier than you are now. And just knowing which direction that is a great step. Even if you don't take a step in that direction right at this moment, at least knowing, boy, it would be cool if I was a little more, like what I've been thinking lately is it would be cool if I was a little more extroverted. I only have almost all my time when I'm not on the road public speaking or reading a book is spent either with one person or by myself. I'm very little time. I don't have a mastermind group in my life anymore, which I've had many times and I've always enjoyed. I don't have like a group of friends that I hang with or go out with, or I had that for much of my life. I don't have that now. There's a part of me, although I do have Facebook and Twitter, which I never had before, there is a part of me that would like to be a little more social, have a few more friends, but not easy to create when you live in such a remote place. But if I were to think about which direction I'd like to move a little bit, it would probably be, at this point in my life, to create a few more social contacts.
We should probably talk a little about social media as we record this it's just a few days before Christmas as we record this, 2010. And the fellow that founded Facebook has been named Time Magazine's Person of the Year.
Yeah.
And so there's been some discussion on the cable news media about whether this was the best choice for Person of the Year and why. And yet the consensus seems to be, this fella has hooked up 1/12 of humanity in just a few years. 500 million people, half of all Americans, have a Facebook account. Now, it's not just Facebook. There's also Twitter and the SMS text message, instant messaging, AIM. There's, of course, our email. And every once in a while, I guess people use the regular post. The old-fashioned.
I mailed 2 letters today.
Put a stamp on it and pay a bill. There's some of that still going on. But the irony of social media connecting us through computers and yet separating us at the same time, so that we have this odd state where we feel we're connected, maybe better connected than ever before. You could have 50 or 100 friends that you hear from every day. Now, they're maybe not saying much of consequence, like, I'm eating my lunch now, okay? It's peanut butter, fine, I don't think I need TMI, I don't need all right. And so a lot of it's silly because we haven't figured out exactly what to do with it. But there's no question that young people in particular are hooked on the need. It's an addiction. The pleasure that we get from receiving a text floods the pleasure centers in the brain with serotonins and these neurotransmitters. And the research is already coming in that says that being addicted to text messaging is a lot like being addicted to nicotine or to heroin, because we get a little rush from, "Ooh, I got mail," right? Even if it's a text message. And we think we're more connected, but in fact, how often have you seen two people at dinner, both on the cell phone, texting, instead of talking to each other at dinner, right? They're texting. Maybe they'll text each other across the table. So it's very strange to stand on a busy street and watch people walking down the street texting, or hear that people are killing themselves in traffic because they have to text while they drive. So strong is this compulsion. And yet at the same time, this is preventing us from being extroverts. This is separating us. And it's an ironic situation. It's paradoxical. I'm not sure what's going to come out of it.
It is. It's being a bad extrovert doesn't make you a good introvert. You know? It's like being bad at extrovert. I mean, attempting to reach out to lots of people and touching no one is a bad job of extrovert. You're trying to get your inspiration, your juice from out there, but it's all whimsical. It's just a cloud. It's not real. It's not solid. There's no touching. There's no deep connection that happens. Or I shouldn't say not. It's rare. You know, people do meet and create greater connections through the internet, but generally speaking, it's just basically not even really touching much. So trying to be extroverted in a safe way doesn't create the introspection necessary. There's nothing wrong with doing it all if you have enough space for it, but attempting to learn how it feels to connect with human beings really needs to be done face to face. You know, there's never been a replacement for the telephone. Doesn't work. The telegraph didn't work. I mean, face to face, when you really want to understand, only a small part of communication comes through the words somebody's saying. You know, there's body language, there's facial expression, there's hand gestures, there's the way the eyes look. There's so much that happens face to face that makes connection, not to mention physical touch, that makes connection so much deeper that you can't get through telegraph, telephone, you know, even this visual telephone thing that's happening more and more. It's all wonderful, but it's all a step back, and I think this disconnected through Facebook and the internet is 2 or 3 steps back, not really an extroversion at all.
Well, we'll see what comes of it, because people are sure hooked on the high stimulus and the immediate gratification of, you know, it's like Pavlovs Dog. It's like ding dong, you got some special tone or ringtone set up for text mail, and you get a little rush off of that, right? It's Pavlov's dog is salivating. It's thinking about dinner. Hundreds of text messages. Try to take a teenager's phone away.
That's mean.
Watch what happens. I mean, that's their connection to the world. That's their whole, I won't say their whole social life, because they have school. They may have other extracurricular activities, but increasingly it's becoming a substitute for a social life. And yet, it's so vital, just so convenient as well, when we really do have something to say to each other. A lot of parents say that's the only way I can get a hold of my child is to text them. They don't answer the phone. They got a cell phone, but they won't answer it. You got to text them.
It's really quite remarkable, because there's so many good things that are coming out of this. You know, so much knowledge is being passed around, so much humor is being passed around, so much entertainment, so much experience is being passed around. The world is viral, and anything good now, like lots of people can get a hold of it and experience it. There's a lot of wonderful stuff that comes out of this, and you know, there's the dark side too. There's the disconnect that feels like it's connecting but isn't really connecting at all.
I can't believe I'm still getting these Nigerian bank scam pitches after 15 years of the internet.
Yeah.
You still get the same phishing scams. Some are clever. Sometimes they'll come up with a new one, but, you know, a day doesn't go by I don't get 15 or 20 people that have several $1 million they want to give me.
People are so generous out there. It's really quite remarkable.
Yeah.
And, there are probably still people every day that fall for those things or they wouldn't be doing it,
Must be.
There must be people that are, P.T. Barnum said there's a sucker born every minute, and people don't understand the basic, they're so Pollyanna optimistic. They don't understand the basic premise as if it looks too good to be true, it is too good to be true. That we can be really outgoing, really upbeat, really optimistic, but we have to have a level of being able to step back and look at this objectively and see that if like the Bernie Madoff thing, if it's not possible, there's something going on here. Something I just read today, one of the wives of a guy who was one of the primary beneficiaries of the Bernie Madoff scheme, and this guy had died and the wife was left, is given back like billions of dollars to the victims instead of the husband's will said give it to charity, but she said no, I'm going to give it back to the people who lost all the money. So it's like a quarter of all the money or something that got lost is being given back by this really wonderful lady. Because
some people did get paid. Some people were making 14%.
Yeah, exactly.
And not wondering how this could be. So now they know. Well, listen, let's do an audio journey. Let's go to that paradise, the alpha brainwave level. Let's do some introspection. Let's play introvert. All right? I hope we've created a new way of thinking about introversion and extroversion for you with this program today. It's just one way of looking at it. I think the most important thing we said at the top, which is that we want you to release the idea that you or anybody else is either one or the other, either an introvert or an extreme extrovert. There's always the continuum. There's always the sliding scale. And there's always a middle. And in philosophy, when people talk about the third way or the middle way, they don't mean just the 50-yard line. They're talking about every permutation and combination. Steve was talking about being a 30% introvert and a 70% extrovert, or 70-30 the other way around, or a 60-40. And at different periods of your life, the blend can change. And different days of the week, you might find yourself, as a result of a mood or a situation, more extroverted or more introverted. But what we've laid over the top of this is a model of knowing yourself through introspection as an introvert, understanding the uniqueness, the genuine, authentic individual that you are behind your thoughts and feelings, your deep, caring nature, what you long for, what you thirst for, okay, what you really, really care about, what you love to do and find interesting. Get fascinated with yourself. And then, as an extrovert, take that out into the world. Give that away freely. Be of service. Just help other people. Sometimes I think it sounds so heavy and difficult, maybe even complicated, to talk about being of service to humanity. How about just helping people? When? How? When they need it. However you can. Just lend a hand. It's more an attitude that you carry with you than anything. Okay? So, if this is a good time for you, get comfortable. Sit back in a chair and relax. If you'd like to sit forward without your back supported, think of yourself as balanced. Not rigid, but nicely balanced, with your shoulders back and your head up. And just watch your breath. Put your attention on your breathing as you begin to create in your body a sense of relaxation, feeling really safe. And then take 2 or 3 slow, deep breaths. And each time you exhale fully and completely, that slow, deep breath, feel yourself relaxing even more.
And this is yet another experience of finding yourself in paradise, finding the self and where you live now on that continuum of introversion and extroversion that you're in charge of somehow. So we're going to do some introspection, going to take a peek inside and see where in that continuum of introversion and extroversion you currently reside. So take a look inside your mind, and you'll see that it's really easy to find like a chart in front of your very eyes that as you look at it, you'll realize it will show you how introverted or extroverted you currently are. It'll move to the left or the right, and you'll see where you are. Is it 50-50 or 60-40 one way or the other? Take a look at yourself right now. Let your intuition recover the right answer. What are you? On that introspection, are you extroverted or introverted? Take a look. See what you do.
Reflection is a nice way to look at this. As if peering into a mirror, a looking glass, or a still pool or pond of water. Seeing yourself as a reflection. And again, rather than using the deductive or logical mind to analyze, which usually results in a lot of criticism and self-loathing, release that when you reflect and introspect. And instead, just freely associate with whatever bubbles up in your mirror or that still pool of water. As you consider yourself, reflect back upon it. And through relaxation and feeling the deep inner peace of this place, mind quiets, emotional nature becomes more tranquil, and it's easier to slow down the thinking and feeling process. Sit back and simply witness it. Just watch it. In the same way you might silently stare into that pool of water.
And it feels safe to look inside, to quiet down your mind. It feels safe to go on this ride and see what you will find. As you think about your thoughts and feel your feelings too, from a step back, a higher perspective, what you'll find will come through is greater understanding and a greater way to know the absolute right direction. It's time for you to grow. So by being introspective through an introverted way, take some time to look inside, see what your higher self has to say. Listen, and it will share the way.
Now, in a moment, we're going to ask you to open your eyes wide awake and alert and find yourself back in the room in which you sit. But before we do, I'd like you to tell yourself simply that you're going to bring with you a sense that you, as a genuine individual, that your authentic character, based on your deepest and most sincere thoughts and feelings, is sufficient. That not only are you adequate. You are far beyond adequate and extremely talented in some areas that you're just now beginning to discover. So even if you don't know exactly what those particular talents and gifts may be, know that you have them. They're the things that you care about, even more deeply than you may currently know. So bring with you effortlessly the sense that you're more than enough. You're okay. Affirm that. And you get to be who you truly are, authentically, without role-playing, without being the kind of extrovert that needs to phony it up, and instead express your honesty. As a result of knowing yourself better, you can express what you know more completely in service to everyone around you. Just bring that attitude with you as you take a slow, deep breath now, pulling in strength and power. Hold as you peak. And now as you exhale, open your eyes, wide awake and alert, back in the room, rested, refreshed, feeling fine, better than before.
Personality is really a fascinating topic. You know, you can go to the internet and get like a free Myers-Briggs test. Just Google free Myers-Briggs, and it takes just a few minutes, and they'll give you a basic 4 things, one of which is whether you're introverted or extroverted. So that's the easy way to find out. And then you can also do the Enneagram thing. Go to the Riso-Hudson Quest. It's Quick Enneagram Sorting Test, QEST, Quick Enneagram Sorting Test by Riso and Hudson. And that's a very easy few minutes to figure out which of the 9 personality types you are. You know, everybody's a little bit of everything, but, you know, we do have predominances. We do have ways we tend to be most of the time. And understanding yourself better is really what finding yourself in paradise is all about.
Hope you can join us here in Paradise in February. Boy, the days and the weeks are just roaring by. They always do. The retreat is scheduled for February 13th through the 18th. This is a 5-day intensive, a mindfulness training that uses really profound mental and emotional peace and tranquility, feelings of deep safety in nature, a kind of a Walden experience, to create expanded awareness through mindfulness so that you awaken to the incredible joy and happiness that exists in the moment. And how do we miss it? By being lost in the past or worried about the future, by being caught up in the stories we tell ourselves over and over or repeat to other people as if our lives are the story. No, those are just the stories you tell. Awaken to the moment, and there's magic all around you. It'll put a smile on your face, and this is going to be taught to you in a way that you can take it back to the mainland, draw upon it in the middle of a traffic jam or a business meeting or in an argument with your spouse when you're frustrated and full of anxiety and you just don't know what to do. You'll remember to take a breath and come back to paradise. That's the value of this week you can spend with us on 70 private acres in one of the most beautiful parts of Maui, the northeastern shore near Hana, beautiful Hana in northeastern Maui. Check it out at focusedpassion.com. Click the big button that says Maui Retreat at focusedpassion.com.
I mean, think about it. After just a few days of being in absolute paradise, all the negative stuff has a chance to just get out of your system. You get to flush it all out and then take the last part of the journey there and really fill up with being aware of the moment of everything smelling spectacular and looking spectacular and sounding spectacular and feeling I mean, every one of your 5 senses will be filled with this incredible, rich, deep, peaceful paradise feeling that you can actually spend days in and soak in and anchor in. So you literally can have paradise in a snowstorm. You literally can have paradise in a traffic jam. You literally can have paradise just before an argument that never does actually have to take place.
Think about the wonderful memories you have of this vacation or that honeymoon you were on or this experience from your childhood. And then consider that you could decide in advance to have that kind of memory, right? That you could create an experience that changes your life and know in advance that this is going to be so memorable that you'll pull upon it for the rest of your life as a tool, part of a skill set that you can use to bring sanity into an insane world. I say to bring heaven to earth. I think that's really what we're talking about. Why don't you join us? Check it out at focusedpassion.com. Or I'll call you back if you want to leave us a message. 24/7, we've got a voicemail in Los Angeles at 818-973-3154. Call anytime, 24/7. Leave me a message. I'll call you back. 818-973-3154.
Great people, great food, great paradise, and just yesterday, the whales came home. So the whales will be there. That's the peak time for whales. You'll see them breaching right before your very eyes. It's one of the most spectacular nature scenes that anybody ever had.
You'll hear them, too.
Every night when they're there, they're making these wonderful noises.
And shall we talk about the fragrances as well?
The myriad,
perfumed
gardenias,
breezes.
Night-blooming jasmine.
Be sure and be there February 13th, 2011. Check it out at focusedpassion.com. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next week. As always, be gentle, love life, and take care of each other. For Steve Snyder, this is Michael Benner. Aloha from Maui.